This is Metro Week. Our top story, the Oro Valley recall election. We'll explain why 4 members of the town council face challengers. We'll also hear from the 3 candidates running for mayor. Then our Journalists Roundtable analyzes the race and the week's news.
Welcome to Metro Week. I'm Andrea Kelly. The events that led to the recall of Oro Valley's mayor and 3 town council members began late last year. Zach Ziegler gives us the background.
November's recall election can be traced back to one action, the town of Oro Valley's purchase of El Conquistador Country Club for $1 million. Public discussions of the deal began at a December 3rd town council meeting. The council voted to approve the deal at its next meeting 2 weeks later. The vote was 4-3 in favor of the purchase and a half-cent sales tax increase that would cover remodeling the 30-year-old country club building, as well as general maintenance and operation of what would become Oro Valley Community and Recreation Center. The rapid timetable of the purchase and the tax hike were cause for concern among some in Oro Valley. The group teed off over tax hikes filed a petition with more than 3,000 signatures in mid-January asking the purchase and the tax be put to a voter referendum. A paperwork error on the petition disqualified it in February, and a state appeals court upheld the disqualification a month later, keeping the matter from a public vote. Oro Valley and the property seller finalized a deal on May 1st. The $1 million price tag included 324 acres in the form of 45 holes of golf, a 65,000 square foot country club building, 31 tennis courts, pools, and other amenities. A few days before the purchase became final, another group, Oro Valley Citizens for Open Government, filed petitions to recall the 3 council members who voted in favor of the purchase. The same group filed to recall Mayor Satish Hiremath, who also voted in favor, in June. Council members could choose to either resign or take part in the recall election. All of the council members decided to appear on the ballot, and a list of their challengers became final in early September. Candidates are now campaigning until the November 3rd election day.
We asked the 3 men running for Oro Valley mayor to join us in the studio. Mayor Satish Hiremath is the incumbent and works as a dentist. Pat Straney is a retired General Motors executive and is president of the Rancho Vistoso Board of Directors. Joe Winfield is a landscape architect who also serves on the Town Parks Commission. And before we get to the interview, we want to note that all 3 of the candidates will appear on the ballot. Winfield's nominating petitions were challenged, as you'll hear. After we recorded the interview, a judge ruled against that challenge, so Winfield will stay on the ballot. Thank you all for being here. Mayor, as we mentioned in our setup package, the crux of this election is the City Council's vote to purchase the El Conquistador Country Club.
Yes.
I want to ask you to explain your vote on that issue.
Well, we had the opportunity to purchase the country club, and there's a lot of misconception and mistruths that are being spread that it was a backroom deal and council didn't know and it was a rush deal. Council directed myself and the town manager to pursue that opportunity as early as June. So they were well aware of it. Now, to the general public, we had a hard and fast date of December 17th, and it was kind of a take it or leave it. There were 2 other buyers in line that were developers, and so the property owners just wanted a commitment from the town, up or down, it didn't matter, on December 17th. And my commitment to them is that I'd bring it to council, and we would vote up and down, and 4 of us voted yes to commit to purchase the country club, which was 324 plus acres in the middle of our town. Out of that, we get a community center, 31 tennis courts, a cafe, a restaurant, 2 swimming pools, and yes, 45 holes of golf.
And Mr. Straney, is this why you're running?
Oh, excuse me, the reason I'm running, actually, this is a recall election. And in a recall election, the people use the process to notify the mayor that he's been recalled. So I have a desire to be mayor. I have some skill sets that I think will come to Oro Valley and bring more of a business structure to decisions that are being made, a large business structure. I've had experience in the community. I've been, since I retired from General Motors as a senior executive with manufacturing responsibility, I immediately got involved with community activity. Most recently, I've been the president of Rancho Vistoso Master Community for almost 8 years. That's about 25% of the population of Oro Valley, so I do have a sense of the community as well. In terms of why, I think probably all of us here, we care about Oro Valley, and I feel very strongly about my view and the proper way to move going forward, and I'd like a chance to demonstrate that.
Mr. Winfield, same question. Are you running because of the El Conquistador vote?
Well, I'm running. That certainly was a catalyst because of the division that the result of that vote created in our community. And so I have a real interest in bringing our community together. I think as a result of the vote and the fact that there wasn't the community involvement, it created some suspicions behind the vote from the mayor and council. And so I think there's a real need to restore trust, to build community unity. And I believe that as mayor that I can do that. I have a lot of experience of working with communities, bringing people to the table, resolving concerns through a pattern of consensus, collaboration, inclusiveness. That's really important to me, to bring the community in on important decisions that affect the community.
Do you think that if the town hires a new mayor in this election, that'll be enough to restore the trust that you think needs to be recreated?
No, that's not enough. I mean, the mayor is really going to be in a tough position because clearly this is an issue that's divided the community. You have those that, of course, are in favor of the decision that the mayor and council made. You have another part of the community that is opposed to it. And so to bring those two together is really going to require some work in terms of ensuring that it's a collaborative process, ensuring that all the voices come to the table. It's going to be a real job, not just a change, but somebody that can really reach out to the community and that they feel that they can have confidence and trust in.
And Mr. Straney, you've mentioned that lack of transparency is one of your top concerns. How will a new mayor change that?
Well, I feel in terms of transparency, I recognize that not everything can be transparent in business deals. I've been involved with joint ventures. I've been involved with acquiring businesses, divesting of businesses. I know that process. It can't be totally transparent, but the information that's appropriate to share should go out, and there should be plenty of time for people to assimilate that information before they're staring at what feels like a very rushed decision, a very rushed vote for whatever reason, and then expect them to support it. People want that process in reverse from the way it happened. Decisions were made, a vote was taken, and then we went out and told the people why it was a good deal. That is exactly the wrong way from my business experience to do it.
And that would, if I can jump in, and that would imply that we had the time to discuss those things and we chose voluntarily not to. But the reality is, on December 17th, they had a non-disclosure agreement basically. And so this came to us way late in the game. And they said, we're going to sign on the dotted line to purchase the Hilton. And if you want the golf course, we're going to do that December 18th. You need to commit December 17th, one way or the other. So the implication about transparency would lend somebody to believe that we had ample time to make this decision, to vet it out in the public. And the fact of the matter is we didn't. It was a take it or leave it on December 17th. Then what we started to do was, because we knew it was rushed, we tried to educate the general public as to why it was important to buy it. And again, if we didn't purchase that amount of acreage in the middle of our town with that many property owners around there, then recall us, because you would have had the exact reverse situation of people who would have said, why didn't you purchase that? $1 million interest free over 3 years? But the fact of the matter is we didn't have the time. And I think it's disingenuous to say that it should have went out to the public and they should have been informed, because that's how I've been doing things since 2010. But in this particular case, you had a hard and fast date.
Excuse me, I seriously take exception to that. You do not buy something without a community's involvement when it involves raising taxes. It involves many millions of dollars in capital improvement that the residents have been committed for. It involves subsidies going on for a minimum of 5 years based on a business plan that is flawed and inadequate due diligence before the decision was made. I strongly object to that.
And Mr. Winfield, you want to get
Andrew,
in on this?
I give the mayor and council the benefit of the doubt that this is, mayors and councils are put in difficult positions where they do have to make decisions that aren't always in favor of the community. I get that, I understand that. And so once this purchase was made, there was a window of opportunity then. I think it should have been recognized by the mayor and council that this was a divisive issue. This divided our community. And so after that purchase was made, it seemed to me that that would have been the time to have stepped back and acknowledged, okay, this was something that really was a problem for our community. Let's now come together and discuss what are the options, what are our choices. One of the other council members said that, we could flip this at any time. We could sell this for $2 or $3 million. If that's the case, but instead of doing that, my observation is that the town just plunged into making renovations, making investments. And so to me, it was disingenuous in the sense to say, okay, I can understand the community involvement on the front had to be shortened. But what about the back end? I mean, there was the window of opportunity to really open up a discussion and bring the community in and not marginalize people who opposed it or who had different opinions. So that was the opportunity, and I don't think the mayor and council took that opportunity, and so I think that spoke volumes about really, are they interested in what the community thinks or not?
And Mayor Hyermath, I'd like to have you respond to that.
That's completely false. We had 3 public study sessions after, and in all 3 cases, I did apologize. I said, look, I know why you're upset. And believe me, had I been on your end, I would have most likely been upset as well. But the fact of the matter is I apologized, and I said, okay, here's what it is. This is our vision. Give us your input. The majority of the people who were in those rooms on all 3 of those public sessions agreed with the direction that we were going. Golf was the piece that was the outlier. But again, we have a plan in place. And to say that we kind of rammed it without talking to anybody, the half-cent sales tax was approved by the Chamber of Commerce Board for the town of Oro Valley. So we have the business support. We have the resident support. It's just that it's impossible to get 100% consensus. So our take is, if this is the general plan, we have an out at any point in time. So, but give us the opportunity to follow that plan. I'm a business owner and I have a pro forma. So they're evaluating in the worst months and saying, liquidate the property because you're not making money. So we have a 5-6 year plan to break even. You take a look at our aquatic center, beautiful aquatic center. It lost $608,000 and there's no chance of cost recovery on that. So are people clamoring to close down the aquatic center? The point is that why should golf be any different? But even if it isn't different, we have a cost-effective break-even plan at the end of 5 years. And all I ask is, don't judge me during the first 2 months that we've owned it. Judge me after the first year, the second year, the third year. Because at any time, we can pull the plug, send it back out to the voters, and have them decide what to do with it if golf doesn't work.
I do want to flip to another issue, and that is, Mr. Winfield, at this moment in time when we film this interview, there's a challenge to your candidacy in court. So someone is trying to have your name removed from the ballot, and I want to have you explain what you think the outcome and why will be of that challenge.
Well, I believe the outcome, I've been in court the past 2 days, and I believe the outcome will be positive in my favor. The issue for me are the petition nominations that you submit as a candidate. So to qualify as mayor, you need 221 signatures. I submitted 290. There's guidelines as to how you receive those signatures, certify them. Really, the issue is, in terms of certification, that the circulator who receives those signatures, that they sign the back of the petition, that they print their name and their address, and all of that was done for all of my nominations. The plaintiff is saying that I didn't sign in the right place, and that's going to be up to the judge to determine.
All right, and Mr. Straney, I just about skipped over you. We've got a minute left, so I'm going to give you the last word.
I again go to community involvement. Part of this recall is because there's a good segment of our community that doesn't feel that they are being represented by the people that were put into office. So going out to the community when you have the decisions, and by the way, the first 2 months of operation were well beyond in losses from what the business plan said they would be, and that comprehended that this is the low season in golf. But I'll go back to my point about representing all of the people. this is a representative form of government in Oro Valley, and your responsibility as a mayor is to reach out and represent all of them in their best interest.
The Oro Valley citizens will choose between the three of you on the November ballot. Thank you all for coming in.
Thank you.
The mayoral candidates filled out our survey with more information about them and their priorities. You can find those on the elections page on our website. Now a review of the candidates running for the Oro Valley Town Council seats in this nonpartisan recall election. Again, here's Zach Ziegler.
The three-way town council race is for the seat held by Mary Snyder. Her challengers are Cheryl Lamona and Doug Burke. Snyder has been on the council since 2010. She worked in healthcare marketing and has held other community advocacy posts in Oro Valley. Lamona is a research analyst for Pima County Supervisor Allie Miller and organized the failed effort to put the purchase of El Conquistador Country Club to a voter referendum. Burke is the publisher of Tucson Lifestyle magazine and has no prior political experience. Snyder is not alone in facing a challenge from someone who worked in opposition to the El Conquistador deal. Ryan Hartung is challenging incumbent Joe Hornet. Hartung, a chemist, headed the effort to force the recall election. Hornet was first elected in 2010 and is a retired electrical engineer. The final race features incumbent Lou Waters and challenger Steve Didio. Waters was an anchor for CNN and has served on the town council since 2010. Didio is a retired Navy officer and businessman. He also volunteers with the Oro Valley American Legion.
Now our journalist roundtable. Joining me in the studio are Tim Steller of the Arizona Daily Star, David Ripkalvis of Tucson Local Media, and Zach Ziegler of Arizona Public Media. Thanks to each of you for coming in today. And Zach, I want to start by asking you if there's anything these public officials could have done to avoid the recall in Oro Valley.
Well, that was something that Mayor Hiremath had mentioned, that maybe if they hadn't have done this purchase, that could have happened. Well, it's hard to say, but the one thing we know for sure is that, well, they went through this process. Maybe they could have been more transparent from the start. We also heard them say they started talking about this in June. That's 6 months where you can at least figure out some way to talk about it a little in public and start getting public information without maybe getting too specific. It's hard to say what they really could have done, but the thing that we know is whatever they did, there are some people who are not very happy about it.
You know, one element, everyone keeps saying they had 6 months, they could have talked about it in public. Government entities rarely talk about buying property in public. It's just dangerous. I covered a county in Texas. They went out in public, talked about some property they wanted, set a max, voted on it in public. We wrote about it. Day of the auction comes, and the first person that bids $1 above their max. You know, state law allows them to go into executive session. It's appropriate to go into executive session. The council members that say they didn't know about it are wrong. They were part of that. But this part of the thing about giving 6 months of public notice really isn't accurate or fair. I think the incumbents have done a poor job explaining that, but it's really not fair. One thing they could have done, and one thing they should have done maybe is, you know, when the people wanted to refer it, send it to a vote.
Sure.
Offer a referendum. But the incumbents refused to consider that.
I think another aspect that's perhaps overlooked is that the deal was hurried in a way that benefited the seller. That is, you know, the city wanted to consummate the deal, and so did the seller. And by springing it quickly, they were able to get the job done quickly, and that benefited HSL Properties. So I'm not surprised people were angry about that. People have been a little uncomfortable up there about HSL's role in the city or in the town for a few years now. And so no wonder we're at this point.
Could the town not have asked HSL for different terms of the sale, though? I mean, would that have been an option? Do any of you know?
Oh, absolutely. And that probably should have been. I mean, even the deal they signed, while you can argue that financially getting that much land in the middle of Oro Valley was a good deal, there were some elements of the agreement that I don't think were that beneficial. I mean, that they can't close one of the golf courses. They're required by their agreement to keep it open, no matter how much money it loses. I mean, there's certain things they're not allowed to do on that property. So I think they could have negotiated a better deal. You know, maybe the timing wouldn't have been different, but the deal could have been different.
Well, yeah. I mean, for the owner, HSL, this allowed them to slough off the unprofitable parts of the El Conquistadors or the golf courses, and keep the profitable parts. And so I think that's, if I were an Oro Valley voter, that's why I would consider voting for the recall. I'm not comfortable with how they were the company was able to kind of manage the deal here.
Tim, do you think, we heard the mayor say that there was maybe more grounds for a recall if they had not purchased the property?
I can't imagine that. I mean, that's a counterfactual that I can't see it playing out that way. It doesn't make sense to me.
You know, and the only way it would have, let's say the city didn't buy it and a private developer did, and over a period of years tore up golf courses and public parks and turned them into housing and apartments. That may have infuriated people, but it would not have been an immediate reaction of anger if the town had not decided to buy the golf courses.
On the other hand, I looked this up today. In the last 22 years, Oro Valley has had recall elections or efforts in 1993, 1994, 1995, 1999, 2001, 2008, 2011, 2013, and now 2015. So it's just a habit up there.
Well, I think that also says those voters pay attention.
Oh yeah, they pay attention,
closely.
and they're riven in. Perhaps the threshold is too low for being able to carry out a recall election. Although I wouldn't say necessarily maybe this one is one of the more justified ones, I would say.
Now, Zach, I want to bring it back to you just a little bit. Obviously, when I interviewed the mayoral candidates, Joe Winfield there was a challenge to his candidacy. We now know, as I mentioned, that's been cleared. All 10 candidates will be on the ballot, as you said. So in the two races where there are 3 candidates, how much of an advantage does that give the incumbent?
Obviously, at this point, there was a reason this whole process moved forward, and they wanted those 2 names off because they felt, well, it's probably better if we can kind of have a united front on the anti-incumbent vote and not split things up. But like you said, there was basically the lawsuits got tossed out because they said it's too late. Some of the out-of-town mail-in votes had already been turned in, so we can't do it regardless of if there were any irregularities. But yeah, this could be a definite advantage for the incumbents.
And David, are we looking at all of the people running against the incumbents? Do they appear to you, your newspaper has covered this race closely, as really single-issue candidates?
I don't think so.
Okay, why
You
not?
know, I think the issue, the catalyst behind this was the golf course purchase. But when you talk to all of them, and there's 6 of them out there, they all bring up other things. You know, people in Oro Valley are concerned about zoning issues. There's been a lot of council votes where they've reduced zoning. You know, they have lots that are half acre and acre size, and all of a sudden they're letting a developer build 8 houses per acre. You know, there's been a lot of concern about apartment complexes going up. A lot of people have moved to Oro Valley because, number one, they want a little bit of space. Number two, they want to be able to see the mountains and the desert. And there's been a lot of construction going on that has blocked that. And so that's some issues that have angered people.
Right, and not coincidentally, some of the big apartment developments have been by HSL. Right. And so when the opponents of those apartments then saw a deal with the same company doing the golf courses, that obviously catalyzed this opposition.
And the same company that gave a lot of money to these 4 incumbents during the last election. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's some ties there, so there's some questions that really haven't been answered very well. But the opposition guys, I think the golf course was their catalyst. I think a lot of them have had an interest probably in running and serving the community for a while, and this was just an opportunity, and they felt it was a good chance to get in there and do it.
David, I want to touch on another Oro Valley topic, and that is that the University of Arizona announced this week it will be opening its veterinary school there. Is this a public-private partnership? What do we know?
Well, it's really a public partnership. It's the town and the university are both public government entities, and they're going to work together. It sounds like a great idea for the people up there. You know, Oro Valley's been really pushing and really searching for high-tech type businesses, you know, businesses that pay well, that, you know, are kind of upper echelon, and this fits really well. I mean, the veterinary school is twofold. Number one, they're going to be training students, which is going to bring a lot of professors and other people that are going to work at that campus and hopefully, from Oro Valley's perspective, move up there. But they're also going to be doing a lot of studies and a lot of things related to animal issues and health issues and human health issues that's going to be really, really high tech. So there'll be scientists and stuff up there, which fits in really good with Innovation Park and some of the stuff that Oro Valley is really trying to do.
Zach, you've been covering that park and the effort of Oro Valley to try and make sort of a biomedical hub. So how important is this to that?
This could really be a third partner in the equation. We have Santa Fe Adventist, and Ventana Medical Systems already in the area. Oro Valley really likes to push those two names and say, yeah, biotech, come here. Look, we've already got these two companies who are here and doing well. Come and join them. Now if we have the U of A joining in just a little ways down Oracle Road, it really kind of plays a role in what the town has kind of pushed as its economic driver for the future.
You know, and there's also talk that ASU is going to come. You know, I mean, there's no signed contracts or guarantees yet, but ASU is looking at building a, you know, small campus in that area and bringing some of its high-tech and biomedical type stuff down there. So it could really be a good move toward the town.
Yeah. Now, for the town, of course, it is
Right.
a win for Oro Valley. I can't help but wonder if it's not a loss for Tucson, the city of Tucson. I mean, obviously the city is the home of the University of Arizona, and it's not as if there's no land available in Tucson. I understand the U of A owned the building that they're now converting into the the veterinary school. But geez, you know, that could have been a big boon to the central city.
And the U of A owns a lot of buildings that they're not using.
Sure, yeah.
So, I mean, they chose it for why they chose it. They haven't really said why here instead of here.
There are overlaps between the veterinary studies and the biomedical treatments and all that, and yet there's overlaps with a lot of different things.
Sure.
It feels to me like there's more to the story.
Well, another story that you wrote about this week, Tim, many stories. The University of Arizona gave President Ann Weaver Hart a bonus and a raise. What do you think about that decision?
Well, it's kind of inevitable the way things are going. The way I described it in my column today is that there's been a kind of privatization or corporatization of public universities for decades now. And so it's kind of not surprising that, as in the corporate world, the high executives are getting increases in pay while the kind of average workers are either facing job cuts, which happened last week at the U of A, or having very low to no raises. So it didn't play that well in the university, not surprisingly, and yet, you know, the justification is there. When you get a new job, like these presidents do, you start in at a higher rate. They build in incentives, and the president here did meet some of those incentives and not meet others. So it meant a lot of money for her, 100-some thousand in merit pay.
And her total package will be above $700,000 a year?
Yeah, it's I think in the $780,000 range, but that's including pension, that's including a $10,000 auto bonus, that kind of thing.
And if you consider it like he's talking about, if you consider it private, she would be running the largest business in Tucson. And so that pay really isn't out of line if you were to consider it, you know, where the universities are becoming more and more privatized and less public. You know, you would have to compare her to someone who's running Raytheon, and you know, that's really the only comparison as far as number of employees that would work under her. So from that perspective, it's probably a pretty fair salary, pretty fair package. You know, the downside is when you're looking at people that are losing jobs and not getting raises underneath her, and they keep giving the upper echelon the bumps, it certainly gives a bad impression.
And the big thing you always have to be concerned about in this is, well, what is fair market value for a university president? Well, it's whatever another employer is willing to pay.
Yeah, there's the kind of appearance, at least, if not reality, out in the world that the boards, both in corporations and universities, and the executives almost have a conspiracy would be too much of a word, but they have a thing going, a kind of a cabal that rewards each other and creates this system where everybody's competing with each other for higher and higher salaries, where at the lower level, it just doesn't work that way. But you do have to move jobs. You have to go somewhere to get those bumps in pay, which people who work 30 years at the University of Arizona aren't doing.
Unless they coach football or basketball.
Sure.
In which case they get paid more than the president. Yes. But Tim, I want to finish on this note. What is the impact of that perception issue with layoffs and lack of increases for people while she's getting that raise?
Well, I just think it's maybe a disconnect. I'm sure it inspires a lack of faith or loyalty in some staff or faculty members at the university. Certainly a lot of harumphing. But what I find kind of interesting is it's very in character with Ann Weaver Hart to just say, basically be very unapologetic and say, I'm the tough decision maker, and that's the way it goes.
All right, I've got to stop you there. Thank you all for coming in this week. Next week, we'll have a rundown of the Pima County bond issue proposals, in which voters will decide if they want to borrow more than $800 million for dozens of projects. We'll have the pro and con arguments. Thanks for watching.